Welcome back to our conversations that we've been having. And one of the most popular videos I shared in the last month was on emotional regulation. And so today I want to go a little bit more into the science of emotional regulation. And I want to combine some of the neuroscience with what's happening in your nervous system. So, welcome. I'm Vicki Haddock, authentic leadership coach and author, and I'm happy for you to be here today. So, we're going to talk about emotional regulation in a couple different ways today. One, I'm going to be teaching you what is happening in your nervous system through the process of emotional regulation, and then through the lens of what neuroscience would call the regulation of your state. So, there are three main states that you can be in. One is a dysregulated space, again, using a neuroscience term. And that we could liken to be like being in the spin cycle, or like your emotions are driving the bus. If you've ever gotten worked up about something and you just get into a spin about it in your head, you just can't sit it down and leave it walk away. That's what dysregulated is. And then the second state is a modulated state where you're very focused. You are, um, clear and paying attention to what's in front of you. You're checking in with what's happening in your body. You can do that and you can return to focus. And that is a more just calm and focused place to be. And then the third state is a restorative state, or what we would call a released, very safe, very freeing state. And in this place, it's where we connect to our wisest, most highest intelligence and resourcefulness, and we feel the most free to be who we are. So let's go back to the dysregulated state, and I want to partner that now with helping you understand what's happening in your nervous system. So in the nervous system, we want to begin to be familiar with the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is that main nerve that runs throughout our body, has branches that go out to every organ, and it's like the highway that transmits our emotions. It is the thing that signals our body as to whether there's danger around or whether there's safety. So it's really key to understand the vagus nerve and how to work with the vagus nerve. Okay. So let's go into that dysregulated state. When you're in that space, your nervous system, or that vagal nerve, is in the sympathetic state. The sympathetic side of it is triggered, and we often associate the sympathetic nervous system with the responses of, at the extreme, freeze, fight, flight, faint, fawn. And then at the less extreme, if you have kind of like, one of the things I've dealt with in my life is kind of this habitual chronic worrying about certain things, that also would be on that spectrum of the nervous system being activated, being, maybe for me, it shows up in a hypervigilant, like I'm hypervigilant about what's happening. And so in that state, all the resources of the nervous system are going to keeping you safe. Also, in your brain, what's happening in that dysregulated state is you drop down more into the survival area, the lower parts of your brain, where everything about your brain is just shifting into, I'm giving you just resources to stay safe right now. And we're cut off from that higher, most resourceful part of our thinking. We can also be in the limbic brain here, which is our kind of emotional section of our brain. Another thing to note that goes along with freeze, fight, flight, faint, fawn is in our limbic brain, time has no meaning. So if you've ever been triggered by something and also all had maybe like an emotional flashback to a boss yelling at you, or something that happened from childhood, and it seems like that could be like really real and repeating itself in the moment, that is probably an indicator that you're in the limbic brain and maybe in this kind of sympathetic side of the nervous system, um, because that part of our brain can't distinguish whether that's happening right now or separate from, it happened 20 years ago. So it's very important to notice that this is also when our emotions are driving the bus. Now, this is a normal state that we're all in at different points in time. And it's a normal part of learning to understand our emotions and to learn how to process them. And it's also a state where we want to begin to learn how to take care of ourselves in that state so that we can move out of it and into another space. This is not a state that you really want to initiate an important communication from. It's not when you want to pick up the phone and call somebody that you're angry with, or it's not when you want to send the email to your coworker that you're pissed off at. This is not that time, right? So give yourself space to come out of that state into one of the next two states before you think about doing that. So moving into the modulated state is moving our nervous system back from the sympathetic into more the parasympathetic, where calming down, there's not danger here, everything is okay. Typically, also, our breathing is slower in this space. When we're dysregulated, our breathing is very shallow and very almost like we're holding our breath at times. And so that can be problematic. So, but in the more modulated space, we're focused, we're breathing normally, and our emotions, although we can be feeling any emotion from anger to joy and peace and calm, but they're not in charge anymore. And what's happening in our brain is we're moving back up into that space of higher, into the higher section of the brain, back up towards the prefrontal cortex, where we connect with our most highest and wisest thinking. It's a space where we can get a lot done. We can be in the flow of things. And I'm just checking my notes here to see what else is important. It's a collaborative space. We're able to stay engaged in conversation, and we can also name the emotions and the experiences that we're having. And then the third space we can go to, which is a space where a lot of healing and restoration happens, is the space of restorative state. So restorative state also goes along with the sympathetic side of the nervous system. And a really key element here is safety and connection. You feel safe to drop the defenses, to drop the pretenses, drop the masks. You can drop the hypervigilance, and it's okay to just be who you are in this moment and to be with whatever emotion is being experienced. It's a state of release where, from a healing perspective, we can bring up maybe that old thought about your boss yelling at you in the past. We can now, in this state, because we're moving back into that higher resourceful prefrontal cortex area of our brain, we can bring that up. We can recognize that that's not happening now. We can bring compassion to ourselves if that did happen to us at one point in time. And we can kind of resolve that experience and release it and let it go so it doesn't have to show up anymore. And that's the power of the restorative state. This is a place where our biochemistry and our body changes, our nervous system, how is in harmony, regulating. And there's also some distinct things about how our thinking is happening in this state. It's more of a presence where maybe a few words pop up. It's that state of insight where all the pieces of puzzle feel like they're clicking together, or you're making this really key awareness is like, been trying to figure out that part of me for so long, and now all of a sudden I understand it and it snaps in place. And so this piece is a really powerful space to be. So in this space, our emotions again are no longer driving the conversation, but they are of key importance in fully acknowledging the emotional experience. And it's like when we sit fully with an emotion in this state, then it can rise to its peak and then it can drop off and release and move away. Now, for example, if you have a really important conversation coming up that you have some emotional content around, you might at first be in that dysregulated state. And I teach a 3-4 difficult conversation framework, which part of that, the three stands for what are the 3 steps that we do to prepare ourselves for the 4 steps in the actual conversation. And one of those 3 steps is taking care of our own emotions. And that moves our emotions from this dysregulated space of being fearful that we're going to vomit them all over in the conversation to the restorative space of I can now use those emotions as content for the conversation, but they're not drivers for the conversation. So if you've been having a conflict with a coworker and it's got you angry and not sleeping at night, that is probably you don't want to have a conversation with them from the energy of that anger, but moving through to regulating yourself. And then when you have the conversation, you can say, one of the ways this tension is impacting me is causing me to lose some sleep at night, which is causing me to be even more short-tempered. So you're taking ownership and you're using that as a content of the conversation, but it's not driving the bus of the conversation. So just to kind of reflect and review, we've talked about the disassociative, modulated, or the dysregulated, the modulated and the restorative state, and how you can begin to recognize when you're in each of those. And I think we'll do a follow-up video to this that talks more about how to recognize and then how to move from state to state. That'll be maybe tomorrow's video. So stay tuned. All right. Thanks for being here. I'd love for you to drop a comment in below that helps me understand what was super impactful for you about this video. If you have a question you would like to hear me answer, please use the submission form in the notes to send that question to me. And thanks for being along. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube that you subscribe to this channel or follow this channel wherever you're viewing this video. So thanks, and until next time, be well.